So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
Wow, these are famous words from Dr. Martin Luther King, spoken 60 years ago to a crowd of more than 250,000 people. It was a cry for justice from people who had known only oppression all their lives, and that cry for justice continues even today. Well, hello. Welcome to this edition of Sheldon Road Church Supplement. My name is Trevor, and our theme today is the call for justice. I'm sure you've noticed that children have a natural and acute sense of injustice. It's not fair, they cry when they see a sibling getting a bigger treat than they have got. Or, it's not fair, they cry when they feel hard done by at school. You see, I remember that feeling very well. When I was 11 years old, I was rebuked by my teacher in front of the whole class for getting a spelling wrong. All the teacher could remember is that she had told me the correct spelling only the day before. But there it was in black and white on a piece of work that I had handed in, the incorrect spelling. All I could remember was that I had written this work and handed it in for marking the day before she had corrected me. Now, in the bigger scheme of life, it was such an insignificant thing, but I still remember my feelings to this day. It's not fair. Well, it wasn't, was it, really? Certainly not. Now, I wonder what feelings of injustice you can remember, maybe as a child or other times in your life. Well, when we look around the world today, we see so many injustices piled upon millions of people, maybe even billions, you know. There's the injustice of poverty, as massive wealth is held by a small handful of people. One survey suggests that the richest 1% of the world own almost half of the world's assets, while the poorest half own just 0.75%. It's not fair, we cry. Then there's the injustice of war. And I'm not just talking about the war in Ukraine, but also in other countries like Sudan and Yemen that have experienced armed conflict in recent times. And of course, it's always the innocent people who suffer, isn't it? They suffer physically when they're caught in the crossfire. They suffer trauma as they fear for their future. They suffer economic deprivation as the finances of the country are channeled into arms and ammunition rather than into the country's welfare. It's not fair, we cry. Then there's the injustice of migration. People fleeing persecution or local injustices. Or maybe they're fleeing simply because they cannot make a living in their own country and they fear starvation. Many end up putting themselves at the mercy of unscrupulous people who take large sums of money to cram them into unsafe boats to cross the Channel or the Mediterranean. It's not fair, we cry. We could go on. I'm sure you can add to the list of injustices. We see it in the news every day, and sometimes we even experience it in our own lives. Life is often not fair. Now, one of the great themes of the Bible is injustice. We see it written large in the Old Testament as the people of Israel, that's Abraham's many descendants, are trapped in slavery in Egypt. And as we read the account of the book of Exodus, we see how God intervenes to release them. We see great miracles which happen, from the plagues on the Egyptians to the parting of the Red Sea so that they can cross in safety, and then once they're in the other side or on the other side, God providing water and food in the desert. They wander for many years in the desert lands before reaching the promised land of Palestine. But during these wanderings, God molds them into a community of grace. It's clear that He is a God who cares about injustice, and He wants it to stop. So now we see and read in the Bible that He is repeatedly instructing His people to be the instruments of bringing His desire for justice into the community. There is a call for God's people to look after the vulnerable, to look after the widows, to look after the orphans, to look after the foreigners, the migrants who are living amongst them. And it's a call that's repeated in other parts of the Bible. It's in the Psalms, it's in the book of the prophets. And, you know, if you've got time, you might like to check out the book of Isaiah in chapter 58. And there the prophet talks about loosing the chains of injustice, setting the oppressed free, setting the oppressed free. It's not fair. It never is. Someone should do something about it. And the call is that God's people should be the first to act, even giving it priority over worshipping God. Now that's interesting. It helps us to see that God is a God of compassion. He cares about people who are the victims of injustice. Jesus puts this into action. He was moved with compassion when He saw people who were the victims of injustice. Here's some examples. What about the woman who was caught in adultery, right in the very act, we're told, and was about to be stoned as she was dragged into the open square, stoned to death, while the man that she had been caught with went free? What about the blind beggar who cried out for help, but was just pushed to the back of the crowd as if he was scum? And what about the man with leprosy who no one would touch, and he had to go about shouting, "Unclean, unclean," wherever he went? That's not fair, is it? Jesus cut right through all that prejudice and injustice. Out of compassion, he forgave the woman. Out of compassion, he restored the sight of the blind man. And out of compassion, he touched the man with leprosy, who no doubt had not felt that sense of touch for many years. It's not fair. It never is. But sometimes we can do something about it. You know, it has been said that Jesus has no hands now except our hands. He has no words now of kindness to offer except for our words. Now that is something to think about. Let justice roll on like a river, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. These are profound words written by the prophet Amos to call us to action. Not so long ago, our UK news was full of the story of Andrew Malkinson. In 2004, he was convicted of raping a girl and leaving her for dead. He served 17 years in prison. And it was only through new DNA evidence that his conviction was quashed and he was released a free man. He didn't do it. He wasn't guilty. But that's not fair, we cry. It shouldn't have happened. An innocent man punished so severely for a crime he didn't commit. It's not fair. Now, I wonder, who does that remind us of? An innocent man punished for crimes he didn't commit, punished so severely that he had to endure the most severe flogging that might have killed a weaker person, and then executed as a public spectacle by a method specifically designed to eke out the pain of death in the most torturous way on a cross. It's not fair. It never is. You see, God, whose nature is compassion and who hates injustice, sent Jesus into our world to show his compassion. He sent Jesus knowing that he himself would become a victim of the cruelest injustice. It's not fair. It never is. But Jesus has shared all that. And just as Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement were fighting to release the chains of injustice on black Americans, so Jesus was fighting on that cross to release us from the chains of our own sins. It's not fair. It never is. But Jesus has been there, and he cares, and he calls us to show the same compassion in an unjust world. Thanks for watching, and bye.